Well, hope was a major theme of Pope Benedict's life and papacy. The theological virtue will also be a hallmark of his legacy. In his 2007 encyclical, Saved by Hope, he wrote, "We need the greater and lesser hopes that keep us going day by day. But these are not enough without the great hope which must surpass everything else. This great hope can only be God, who encompasses the whole of reality and who can bestow upon us what we by ourselves cannot attain." And joining us tonight with more is theologian and ethicist Dr. Pia de Solenni. Pia, great to be with you. We appreciate it. They say that the one who has hope lives differently. This certainly seemed to be the case in Pope Benedict's life. Where do you see that theme play out in his life?
It's great to be back with you, Tracy. Thank you. I think that we just see it in so many of the choices that he made. He didn't want to be in positions of power. I mean, it wasn't something that he was aiming for. And in the end, with his resignation, he gave up power because he trusted that he could do more for the church in prayer. And that, to me, indicates someone that has a great hope in something that is beyond this world. And, we're sad at this earthly loss. We're experiencing an earthly loss. But we as Christians, we have the virtue of hope. And so our hope is that our loss is heaven's gain.
Absolutely. And did you see that play out today, that theme of hope?
I believe so. I think we saw it in the pilgrims over the past few days, all of the tens of thousands of people who attended, the shouts of Santo Subito. I mean, people, they're sad, but there is a hope, and there's an understanding that we haven't lost him. I think it underscores our understanding of the communion of saints. We know that we haven't lost Benedict, that in fact now he's an intercessor for us, and he will continue to pray with us even more so than he did in this life.
Yeah, and as you know, as is tradition, the Vatican recently published Pope Benedict's spiritual testament, written about a year into his papacy. In it, he asked for forgiveness from all those that he wronged. He goes on to say, quote, "Pray for me so that the Lord, despite all my sins and insufficiencies, welcomes me into the eternal dwellings. To all those entrusted to me day by day, my heartfelt prayer goes out." Your thoughts on those words, and what do you think it says about the former Pope as a person?
I think it just underscores his humility. It speaks volumes about his humility. And when I was working in Rome, I had a short contract with the Vatican newspaper, and I would have my lunch in St. Peter's Square. And at that point, he was still head of this congregation for doctrine of faith. And I would see him walking across the piazza, and people didn't know who he was. And they would stop and ask him, where's the 64 bus? Where's that, where are the Vatican museums? And he always greeted people in a very friendly manner, and he would ask their questions. And for me, I was just a fly on the wall, and it was wonderful to see this great intellect, this great leader in the church who was so happy to answer people's simple questions, even about where the bus was.
Yeah, it says so much. I want to go back in time for a moment to when Pope Benedict became Pope after the death of Pope St. John Paul II, of course, as we know, who was incredibly popular and charismatic. Can you talk to us about how Pope Benedict rose to the occasion?
Well, I think, first of all, at the funeral mass of St. John Paul II, before he was elected, I mean, he showed that he had tremendous understanding. And I think he really demonstrated that, or at least it was demonstrated to us, that he was able to advance the work that John Paul II had done. And in his election, again, we saw somebody set aside his personal desires. He wanted to retire with his brother to Germany and lead a quiet life. And he set aside all of those personal desires to enter into responsibility and also deeper into the mystery that he was living as a Christian. And each one of us is called to live this Christian mystery, and we're called in different ways. And I think there was something of it was a mystery. And here he had to reconcile his personal desires with something that he was being called to. And he did that so beautifully and so graciously and so generously.
Yeah, something else I want to touch on. The Associated Press reports that while Pope Benedict will go down as one of the Church's great theologians, history will remember him for a, quote, single revolutionary act, and that was his retirement from the papacy. What do you think about that? I mean, do you think history will only remember him from stepping away from the papacy, or for much more than that?
Oh, I think he'll be remembered for much more. But he is, I think he really is setting the papacy on its trajectory in a much more global world, one in which the type of leader that we need has changed. And, John Paul II was 58 when he was elected. He was very young. He had a lot of communication skills and so forth. And that was already changing the template. And I think that when Benedict stepped down as Pope, he realized that he really was not capable of taking this forward. I think he did this with great prayer and great discernment. I actually saw him at a private audience the Thursday before he announced his resignation on that Monday. And my first thought when I saw him was, I don't know how this man physically can govern the church and rise to. I think the demands are such that we're going to have to maybe reconsider what it means for the Pope. I mean, does there come a point when we have more retirements than once every 600 years? These questions are, I think they're up for discussion, and we have to look at the needs of the faithful. And is it realistic to expect this from a mere mortal as they become older and older and suffer more and more physical limitations?
Now, Dr. de Solenni, thank you so much for coming on. We always appreciate your insights. God bless you.
You too. God bless.